All right, good day, friends. We're going to be, I guess I've been taking maybe a hiatus from health talks so much. I've been doing a lot of spiritual talks, and I want to continue doing that. But today we're going to be doing a health series, I guess the beginning of a health series. We're going to be exploring the human digestive system. We're going to be going all the way from the mouth to the anus. We're going to be looking at some anatomy and some physiology. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. And we're going to put that together with what the Lord has said in terms of health and diseases that are more frequent than not in those systems, and how we can help and address them. So before we do so, I do want to invite the Lord's presence, because whether you're talking about health or spiritual matters, God is He's the chief scientist and the chief doctor. So let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for science and for learning. And we pray, oh Lord, that you might bless us, bless my mind, that I might remember all of those things that are in there, and be with us, that we might not only learn, but having learned, we may apply these things to our lives so that we can be better. Thank you again, in Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to be talking about health and the human digestive system. So what is the digestive system? Just before we reach the digestive system, though, I want to talk a little bit about the two laws of life, and I'm going to write them on the board. So one is simply that life is in the blood. So that's one of the major laws of life. And the other one is perfect circulation equals perfect health. H-E-A-L-T-H. So we want to keep in mind these particular two things. Now, all the other laws of health. So if you're looking at herbal medicine, if you're looking at how we dress, if you're looking at how we eat, if you're looking at sleep, if you're looking at sunshine, if you're looking at exercise, all of them are there in order to build upon this foundation. So if any part of the organism is diseased and we want to bring it back into balance, or if there is no disease and we just want to keep and maintain that balance, then the life is in the blood. So as long as your blood has what it needs, then it can maintain health, or if there is illness, it can bring health and bring back balance. But even if your blood has everything it needs, but something is affecting the ability for it to reach the parts of the body that it needs to reach, then you're still going to have a trouble. And that's why you need perfect circulation in order that blood is getting everywhere. So keep that in mind as we go through what we're going to go through, because it's very, very important. Digestion is simply breaking down complex particles through a mechanical kind thing that begins in the mouth, and as well a chemical kind thing to make it smaller. So let me just tell you that whether you're talking about carbohydrates, or you're talking about proteins, or you're talking about water, or you're talking about minerals, vitamins, so if you want to put iron there, or potassium there, or phosphorus there, all they are is a bunch of chemicals, elements really. So all of the food that we eat are based on carbons, hydrogen, oxygen. Those are the major ones that are found in almost anything you name, whether you're talking about a cup of rice or navy beans. It's a whole lot of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen in different chemical bonds with different structures. And in the protein groups, and in some of the other groups as well, even in the mineral group, you're going to find some nitrogens and some hydrogens. Water is just hydrogen, oxygen. And then you're going to find some of the other ones that you can find in the periodic table, like iron and potassium and phosphorus and calcium and sodium, and all of these things, they're just elements. So if you're thinking about digestion and what we should put in our mouth, then think about it this way. When God made man, he made man from the dust. When man dies, man goes back to the dust. So everything for life, to support this idea of the blood, is actually in the ground. How does it come out of the ground? Well, you plant something in it, and the plant absorbs it from the ground, which is interesting because just how the plant absorbs things from the ground is actually very much how we were made to absorb things from our small intestine. And it's fascinating. As we go through, you're going to understand. And so in the ground, you know, any good farmer knows that's what the soil needs. It needs all of these different things in it. You know, if you go buy fertilizer, it's going to be majorly NPK, and you could buy a what do you call it? Either macro minerals or micro minerals to add to that soil, or you can do covers which help with some things growing in the soil. So if you're a farmer, so I farm, you're going to see a couple of things when you look at healthy soil. And by the way, this is actually pertinent to the digestive system. Stay with me here. But when you look at it, you're going to see a lot of things moving around. When I look at my soil, they have like these little white things, and they're living, they're moving around. And then of course, there are earthworms in there. And then of course, there's also mushrooms that grow. And I'm like, I don't even know why all these mushrooms are there, but mushrooms will grow in the soil. And then after a while, I get beautiful crop. The question is, what are all these things doing? And are they doing anything? Like mushrooms and the little things that I see and the earthworms, and there's actually bacteria in the soil. Well, they're all helping the plant to root to be able to have the highest level of absorption. It's fascinating because as we go through, you're going to see that what's interesting about the human digestive system is that, one, I'm going to write this on the board, because this is amazing. 70% of your immune system is actually in your digestive tract. And that's pretty amazing. 70% of your immune system is in your digestive tract. So if you're trying to fight off illness and you're sick in your digestive tract, you're going to have trouble. And it's for this reason why the digestive tract of humanity is under attack, because it is so closely connected to both the health of the mind and the function of immunity. And we're going to talk more about this as we go. Now, you have 10 times more microbes in your body than cells. You know, one person asked the question, what is a human? And from the understanding of science, he was trying to answer, and he said, we might actually be more microbe than we are human. And the reason for that is because there are 10 times more microbes. There is actually 100 times more microbial DNA in your body than human DNA. That even becomes more fascinating. You actually have in your gut and in your digestive system more microbial DNA than you have human DNA. So the question is, what is it doing there? Well, it's God designed that it should be there for the very same reason that there are microbes in the soil, for absorption. And we need to be able to understand this. So you have 3 to 4 pounds of bacteria inside of you. So anytime you jump on that scale, just know that 3 to 4 of the pounds that you're seeing on the scale reflected there is bacteria. In fact, your fecal matter, so anybody changing their diet may see an increase in the amount of fecal matter that they're excreting, because the more fiber you give your bacteria, more action that you have, and more of your actual fecal matter is actually made up of bacteria, which is just, to me, all these things are fascinating. So the digestive system is called the enteric system, and it's connected to your brain by the vagus nerve. What's pretty impressive is that even if this vagus nerve is cut, and by the way, this particular information is actually extremely essential for those of you that might be dealing with long COVID. Maybe I'll explain the connection down another lecture. But if this vagus nerve is cut, the enteric system or your digestive system is able to function without any connection to the brain at all. So it's called your second brain, which is remarkable. And this we've known for a long time. Another fascinating fact is that 80% of all the serotonin in your body is produced in your digestive system. By the way, serotonin is a neurotransmitter. And it's one of the most well-known neurotransmitters. And it's interesting. Let me make a connection here between, a simple connection between the health of your digestive system and you as a person. So serotonin is especially important in several things: sleep, wound healing, immunity, but listen to this one, mood. So serotonin determines in a large measure whether or not you'll handle stresses around you well. So can you imagine that if your digestive system is under attack, so if you're struggling from whether it's diverticulosis or gastritis or Crohn's disease or any of these things, that just your ability to handle stresses and to be able to be happy will be severely affected. No wonder so many people in the world are depressed. They're depressed largely because their digestive system is just out of balance. And this is why when you correct the digestive system, a lot of disease goes away. Because again, the life is in the blood. And the only way that blood is going to be able to carry heat, oxygen, nutrition, hormones, and everything else it does is if we're being able to digest and absorb. Hence the health of the digestive system. There are more than 60 known digestive hormones. And the commensal bacteria inside of the gut is actually involved in metabolism. So you can't reach proper weight if the bacteria, remember we're more microbe, we're more microbe. You can't reach a perfect weight and maintain a perfect weight when your microbes are out of whack. And so some people are wondering, like, why can't I lose weight? You know, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Your digestive tract is not in balance. The probiotics, the probiotic bacteria that you have are essential in helping you to regulate fat in the body. So they will attach themselves to cholesterol. They will attach themselves to fat molecules and actually carry it out of the body if your body is telling them that your body has enough. So triglyceride levels and cholesterol levels are maintained by microbes. And so can you imagine in a world where most of us, when we had a fever as a child, we were given our first antibiotic dose. And then, 3 years later when we had a cold and we went to the doctor, another antibiotic dose. And then, we're not eating prebiotic-rich foods, so we're not eating high-fiber foods. And all throughout our lives, we've been doing this. And by the time we're 25, we have so much colds. Like every time the flu is going around, we catch it. By the way, there's no such thing as catching a cold. But this is what we say, right? So every time it's going wrong, we catch it. And we somehow believe in our minds that this is normal. But it's not normal. But it becomes very difficult when you consider that 70% of the immune system is found in the digestive system. And we're constantly bombarding the digestive system with things we shouldn't eat, medications, all sorts of chemicals, whether it's from everywhere, really. So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to try to use the system. And by the way, the digestive system is about 34 feet if you lay it all on a track. So it's pretty long, which is good. In dogs, for example, their digestive system is very small. So what they eat passes through quickly. With humanity, it's not so. What we eat takes a time. everything takes a time for us, Our brains, most animals, when they make a child, it takes weeks, sometimes days to a month. The child can already be considered an adult. Not so with humanity, though. It takes at least 16 to 18 years for us to be considered an adult. So everything with us takes a little longer, and it's because humanity is more than animal. God created us, after all, to be such. So there are 3 phases of digestion. The first phase, let me just take this off the board a little bit. The first phase is sensory. Now, if you know the story of the Garden of Eden, then you'll know that God made food with a couple of things. He says that food should be good to the eye. And by the way, keep this in mind if you are somebody that makes food. So it should be good to the eye. So food should look nice. It should be good to the body. So that means it should be healthy for you. And you have to keep in mind that food is very sensory. What does that mean? Well, the first thing that you'll do if you have some beans is that you probably smell it when you're cooking it. Some people even use ear sound when dealing with food. In fact, some of the greatest gastronomists of the time are doing remarkable things because food is also connected in our minds with sound. So we have smell, sound, of course, touch, the texture of things. And then we have taste. So all of this, and it must look good, and it must be good. Now, when you see something like that, your mind starts thinking, well, when I get home, I'm going to have some curry potatoes with those beans and that rice. Immediately, some things start happening. Your heartbeat starts going a little faster. Your blood pressure increases. All in preparation for you to digest food. Things start happening. Your saliva, we say your mouth starts watering. It's interesting. It's interesting the language that we use. But so your salivary glands begin moving, and hydrochloric acid starts putting itself into your stomach. Now, by the way, as we go through the digestive system, we're going to be talking about regularity and how important that is, because the fact that we're grazers, humanity, we're adopting some things that we weren't made to do. So when I say we're grazers, I mean some of us eat at 7, we feel a little peckish, we take something else at 9, a little peckish at 11, and maybe a lunch, maybe at 12, but maybe Annie comes over, so maybe 2 o'clock we have something else. So we're grazers all through the day eating. This is particularly hard on the digestive system. And some of the new diets and fads that are out, particularly hard for the digestive system. We're going to talk more about this. Then there is sensory phase, then there's the physical phase, and this has to do with your teeth. Your teeth just grinding stuff together and throwing it against your tongue, et cetera, and you know how that works because I believe that every one of us grind things. And we need our teeth, and we're going to be talking about it actually in just a moment. And then there's the chemical phase where enzymes are coming together to being secreted by different organs in the body to break those molecules apart. Because, for example, let's look at proteins to amino acids, carbohydrates to glucose. I mean, it's just, so imagine the protein as being, so let's make something like that and even put in a third one. So imagine it being that bound in a bean. And you want to get it to the place where it's just like that, because that's how the body will think it. So it's what happens in the digestive process is almost a repackaging of goods in order that the blood might be able to use them. And it's fascinating how this process works, and we're going to get more into it as we get into the mouth. Wow. So let me take this off and do a very interesting drawing as we get into the mouth. All right. Wow. Okay, good. So those are lips. And that's the mouth. Okay, that's a bad end mouth there. All right. And this mouth is connected to, so this is mouth, connected to pharynx, which is the opening between the windpipe and the mouth, goes into esophagus, and there's sphincters, little muscles. That thing goes into small intestines, where much absorption happens, goes into larger intestines, then finally to the anus. Interesting drawing. But that's basically how it goes. So right now, where we are going to stay is actually in I'm really bad at this, in the mouth. In the mouth. And I'm going to use my mouth as it's going to make more sense as we do this. So you have a lot of mechanical processes that happen with your jaw, and you're chewing and you're grinding stuff. And by the way, it's important to consider this grinding. So if your teeth is not well, you're gonna, if you don't, let me say it this way. If you don't have good teeth, your digestion is in trouble. For whatever reason, that's just the truth, because teeth are very important. Now, as you're chewing, your salivary glands start sending out saliva. Now, saliva is interesting in itself. I don't know how many of you have ever seen dogs like licking wounds. A dog will lick a wound, or a cat will lick themselves. Why do they do that? Well, they do it for a particular reason. So first of all, saliva of itself has in these buffers that actually stimulate wound healing, cell proliferation. It causes cells to heal, wounds to close. And so our saliva is particularly beneficial because I don't know, I believe that one of the reasons is that the Lord knows that some of us, we chew so fast that they say you bite your tongue or you might bite your cheek, and the saliva actually helps that to heal very, very quickly. Saliva also stimulates the enzymes on the skin, the microbes on the skin. I don't want to say to change form, although that's polymorphism and that would be right. But it stimulates the microbes in the mouth and on the skin of the animal to actually to have a greater immune effect. That's the best way to do that, to have a greater immune effect, which is great because we need all the immune effect that we can have. One of the other things that chewing does, now, you guys should know that right here, I normally show people, I don't know if you can see, but right here, you have your little tonsils. That's your lymphatic first defense against whatever's going into your mouth. Our mouths have the ability to pick up an infection very quickly. And so for most of you looking, you'll know that you've had a sore throat probably more than once in your life. But we thank God for the lymphatics. Well, there's something else. Right here, in this region, right by your ear here, there's a gland called the parotid gland. And when you chew food, it stimulates the parotid gland to release an enzyme. The enzyme release stimulates your thymus gland, which is right here. So right here, you have another gland called your thymus gland that humanity wants to throw away. It's interesting how humanity tries to throw away glands. I don't know why we think that we're smarter than the God who put them there. But it stimulates the thymus gland to produce T cells. What are T cells? T cells are considered killer cells. What do? They kill What do they kill? Bacteria, viruses, anything invading you. So let's back up so that you remember what I said there. I said that chewing stimulates T killer cells in your body to kill bacteria, viruses, etc. So please, you need to chew your food. Yes, you do. You need to actually spend time chewing your food. And the reason why that little mechanism is there is because, again, the mouth is constantly open like I am now talking. There are various particles that are just coming in my mouth. And it's constantly like a wet, moist place for problems. But God has these protective mechanisms. The tonsils, lymphatic nodes, which are protective. And as well, this interesting stimulation of the parotid glands and the thymus glands to produce, again, immunity, which I find fascinating. So please do remember to chew your food. Now, saliva also does something else. Now, when you eat, now by the way, I'm going to put this greens, magnesium, stress, life. Now, in the beginning, God did not give us greens. In the Garden of Eden, we weren't eating greens. We really weren't. We weren't eating greens. After sin, God added to mankind the herb of the field, greens. Why? Greens are a mineral-rich source. And they're rich in a couple of things, magnesium, potassium, several things that help, particularly in managing stress and giving to the blood life. And that's why I wrote it that way. Now, it's fascinating that greens do everything. So if you're wondering how a cow makes milk, that's greens. And if somebody tells you that a steak, if you go to the restaurant, you have a steak, is so rich in protein, just letting you know that a cow made this rich protein steak from greens. So if you need calcium, what should you eat? Greens. And if you need protein, what should you eat? Some more greens. That's exactly how the cow is doing it. It's exactly how the elephant is doing it. And by the way, God added some greens to our diet too, because he knew we would need more of it. And we do. But there's an interesting thing that happens, particularly in the mouth, with greens when you chew them. It doesn't happen if you just drink them. And it's because I told you that everything is connected, including the chewing mechanism and the saliva and all of it coming together. So when you're chewing your food, some greens and beets have in them nitrates. And on the tongue, the microbes on the tongue convert these foods to nitrites. And when you swallow it and it mixes with the gastric juices, it produces nitric oxide, which of course is great for a lot of things in that it helps with the life in the blood by increasing the oxygen capacity of the blood and the actual channels through which the blood flows. So it actually increases circulation. Hence, it's bringing health. However, if you're someone that is eating things that really should never be entered into the stomach of man, like cheese, which is very, very high in amines, or smoked herring, which I really liked as a child, then you might be eating a mouthful of greens and chewing it, and your little microbes, they're producing nitrites from the nitrates, but when you swallow it down, because you ate that also with a piece of cheese and some smoked herring, and it enters your stomach, then those nitrites actually join with the amines to produce nitrosamine, which, by the way, is a cancer-causing compound. And so even your greens were not able to do the benefit that God intended because you were eating that which God did not intend you to eat. So let's just go quick. I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can through the diseases of the mouth and some of the treatments. So we have irritation and inflammation. So all inflammatory diseases, and most diseases actually fall into the category of inflammatory diseases, can be helped by restoring balance. How do we do that? reduce acidity, increase alkalinity. Several ways we're going to talk about that. Some people have bleeding gums. If anything is bleeding in your body, the first place to look is to see if you have vitamin C, flavonoids, vitamin C and bioflavonoid lack. So back in the day, scurvy was a big thing, and people would have bleeding gums, and it's because they weren't having a lot of vitamin C. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the captain on a ship. His sailors had bleeding gums, and then they started carrying citrus, so tangerines and oranges on the ship. The sailors started eating it, all the bleeding gums stopped. Now do remember that if you're going to take a vitamin C supplement, please make sure it marks vitamin C and bioflavonoids, because how God prepared vitamin C in a tangerine is not the same way as just vitamin C in a bottle. It's not the same thing at all. So in a tangerine, there are bioflavonoids, but it's much more than bioflavonoids. So it's actually better to get your source of thing from the actual thing. But if you're going to go with a supplement, please make sure it reads vitamin C and bioflavonoids. Receding gums. If you have receding gums, then you have bone loss, because these little guys there, they're bones. They're your exposed bone. How do you help the bone? Please don't tell me by eating calcium, because that answer would be wrong. Right now in the world, we are calcium overloaded. So many of us have several troubles. So those of you that were eating whatever, your cheese, or your milk, or your eggs, or your meat, if that's what you were eating, you're in some trouble. You just have this. And the reason you're in some trouble, if you see that your teeth you have receding gums and your teeth enamel is having some trouble, is because if we take this cow and we take this cow and we put this cow into a stomach, and we take what's in this cow, then what happens to our bone, even if it's a teeth bone, is that there's a loss of calcium in order to compensate for the protein amount, even in 1 glass of milk, by the way. And so the bone is losing not only calcium, let me write here, other minerals, because the bone is made up of many minerals, not only calcium. And this imbalance causes receding gums. It causes osteoporosis. It causes all sorts of things. So that the countries that have the highest protein rich diets are the ones that actually have the highest osteoporosis in the world, like New Zealand, for example, which are known for their cows. Well, how can we fix this though if we have receding gums? Then you have to bring back balance. Now I'm telling you, don't just use calcium, because right now there's calcium enriched soy milk, there's calcium enriched almond milk, there's added calcium from this, biscuits and all have calcium. If you take a cookie, it might say reinforced, fortified with calcium. We don't need all of that calcium. And just so you know, the best source of calcium are lamb's quarters, also known as choy roy kalu in my country, which we love. It's one of the highest greens, and it's actually one of the highest sources of calcium. But you don't need all this fortified calcium, because what calcium does is, whilst it's helpful in balance, if you have too much calcium, calcium hardens things. And when something gets too hard, it has a highest tendency to break. And so many people that have heart disease and stroke, one of their problems is too much calcium, because it actually gets into the lining of the arteries and it makes the artery wall more brittle, hardening it. So again, humanity, we're in trouble, because the amount of things, and in order to try to help us, the doctors and the scientists are telling us to do things that don't make sense for the digestive system. And we're going to talk about some of that. So if you have bad breath or halitosis, first thing, you might have dental caries. So you might just need to go to the dentist. And dental caries is fascinating. Can dental cavities heal? Yes. Yes, they can. It also can be caused, though. You can have a really good mouth of teeth, but you're still having bad breath because you have low hydrochloric acid, or you have trouble much farther down. You have stomach trouble, you have colon trouble, your microbes are out of balance and they're not able to digest, and it's actually producing a smell that comes back through the mouth. Or you might have some sort of sinusitis. So if you look here and here and here on my face, I hope you can see that. So let me take this off. So it's here, along here, and up here on both sides of your face are your sinuses. And if you have sinusitis, so if when you wake up in the morning you were swallowing mucus, and they might feel like if there's a constant lump in your throat that you're swallowing down or something like that, or you're constantly pulling up, or even if you feel, I see people doing this here, this kind of movement here, and you feel as if there's an itch from your throat to your ear. That also can be a trouble. Is what's causing that actually is bacteria that's climbing up to your ear, which is fascinating in its own self, but we're not talking about that right now. So gingivitis, if you have gum disease, then what you need to do is floss. Now, do we need to floss? What did people do before they flossed? Well, in my country, my uncle had, he called it chew stick. He called it chew stick. And every morning he would pick this stick and he would just put it in his mouth and chew. And the stick of itself, I think in some countries it's called toothbrush stick. It cleanses the mouth. By the way, also when you eat certain foods, it'll cleanse the mouth and help with that kind of trouble. Brush your teeth, of course. If you're having some other trouble, you can use some herbs. So what herbs are good for the mouth? Myrrh is mine, it's bitter perfume. So a myrrh mouthwash is excellent for the mouth. Golden seal is good for all mucus linings. So of course the mouth with the saliva, so golden seal, excellent for that as well. Mouth ulcers, canker sores. People have a lot of troubles with their mouth. Some of them have strange looking tongues. All of those are a sign of things not going well, and you need to rebalance the system. I wish I could tell you there's a quick fix. There isn't a quick fix, but there's some things that help, like coconut oil pulling. Coconut oil is fascinating in many ways, and we're going to talk about that as we go through the digestive system, because it's the oil in the world that is highest in medium chain fatty acids, which themselves operate different from other fats. The other thing about coconut oil is that the microbes on the skin turn coconut oil into a super booster in terms of a protective mechanism and a mechanism that fights, so that when you put it into your mouth, the microbes in your mouth do the same thing. And so for a moment you have created, as you're swishing around your coconut oil, you have created a antibiotic mouthwash, and it pulls the effect of why they call it oil pulling. It's actually pulling bacteria and that which you might not want to be out of the mouth. What about whites? We call it whites, and so you'll see some people with like a whitish tinge. Their tongue is coated white. What they have is candida. And for that, you need to starve the fungus and help to rebalance against the microbes. So I've completed there the mouth, and I'm sure that some of you will have questions. And on these videos, if you do have questions, please ask them beneath. But all of that is happening in the mouth and so much more. And if we need to start from the mouth. So digestion, it starts from the mouth, and it actually somebody might say it might start from the eyes, because it's the sensory phase. But we need to make sure that we're trying to understand how digestion works, so that we're consuming the right things. we're being cautious because humanity, we like shortcuts. And some of the shortcuts that we choose in terms of what we put in our mouth is actually very harmful. And the digestive system, again, when it's not working right, we can't think right. And that means we can't make right choices. And it's my belief that the devil knows this very well. And for this reason, he has been attacking the digestive system, what we eat, how we eat, when we eat, even why we eat. So we're going to continue to explore this as we end up into the esophagus. We finished the mouth. We're going to go into the esophagus in the next part. So may the Lord bless you. Be careful what you put in your mouth.